Inasmuch as the Constituent Assembly approved movement system of governance in the Constitution, there was a fight by multi-party supporters to have the political space opened up.
What we are saying is that we want multi-party system of government because it has been tried the world over. It has not been perfected yet, but it's so far the best system the world over.
The movement supporters carried the day and inscribed the controversial Article 269 in the Constitution to inhibit activities of political parties.
I want to allude to what my Honorable Sister Cicero Gwaru said in her speech. He appealed to the NRI. Before she did appeal, she said it would be unethical for a doctor, after diagnosing a patient and finding out the disease, to send that patient to the mortuary. Certainly, I agree with her. I agree with her. When you diagnose, you treat, you don't send somebody to mortuary. And I wouldn't want to see multi-parties sent to mortuary. But I believe she agrees with me also that it would certainly be unethical and unprofessional to release a very sick patient. To release a very sick patient whom you have diagnosed, after diagnosing her, to release her and declare her heresy, especially when the disease is a deadly and infectious one.
I remember saying, no, my dear sister, the parties are not in coffin, they are intensive unit. I said, the parties are in intensive unit, being treated, being worked on, environment is getting clean so that the parties will heal and get out of intensive unit.
Our generation had certain question marks about UPC, DP and other parties, particularly our younger generation, because these parties were hinged on religion, right? You may find that UPC was basically Protestant, right? And DP, was basically Catholic. And some of us did not see any difference.
So when Cecilia Ogwal, now late, brought in the motion for the return of parties, I'd already been appointed a minister in government. I was State Minister for Foreign Affairs, International Relations. We debated. When it came to voting, which was by division of lobby, there's nothing like you can deceive people. I did this. People in support of Cecilia Ogwal, people who opposed Cecilia Ogwal's motion, and the Minister of State, Foreign Affairs, the CA delegate for Agago, was with the return of parties. The record is there, you can. You get what I'm saying? Mayanja and Kange sat on the fence. He remained in the middle. It was neither here nor there.
However, a silver lining in the Constitution provided a slim chance for the multi-party supporters to fight for the restoration of political parties.
My dear honorable brothers and sisters, let us put our political systems in our Constitution and people choose which one they will take. Therefore, I oppose the deletion of this amendment of this provision without the substitution. I certainly support the substitution which is being brought by Obiga.
We said, but since people have different attitude, you never know. After 5 years, you never know. They may want to change. Therefore, let us say a referendum. In the CA, a Constitution of Uganda was made with wisdom, with reasoning, with the consensus, really.
There was that euphoria, there was that love with the movement type of government. Because 2/3 of the country had been peaceful up to then and even subsequently. Had been peaceful. So they say, look, this system works. And that's why we put as a caution, as a caveat, a rider that, okay, fine, let's go movement. But in the year 2000, 5 years later, let's go back to the people to determine whether we still go this or we return the party.
I think we realize there is an issue there. We kick the can down, we say, until Parliament makes a law, political parties shall not do this. In other words, we were now leaving it to Parliament to decide about the fate of political parties. So Parliament comes in, and it's Article 269 once says Parliament must make a law. So the executive must bring a law.
The Constitutional Amendment Act.
Between 1999 and 2003, there were several attempts by the NRM government to maintain the movement system by way of some of the bills brought to Parliament, and so were they matched by the number of legal challenges in court.
And they have the unfortunate honor of chairing the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee where the bill was brought.
The first attempt occurred when the government, through the then Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, the late Joash Mahanja Kanji, did good to table a constitutional amendment bill, only to be rejected by the MPs.
We look at what is in the bill, and it has reproduced what is in the Constitution. In other words, let's continue with the movement system.
The Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee had rejected the bill.
The House, as I told you, even people who are in government listen to what I'm telling them. They see the reasons I'm telling them. If you pass this thing, it will be declared unconstitutional. Don't. They agree with me, and they pass it. But that is now towards the end of the term of Parliament. That's in 2000. So the bill is passed by Parliament, is taken to the President. He refuses to sign it. He waits for the next Parliament. Somebody goes to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court declares it null and void.
In July 2000, the first referendum on a political system was held, and multi-party supporters lost once again as an overwhelming majority voted for the movement. The outcome of the referendum was first upheld by the High Court, although it had ruled that the law on which the referendum was conducted was unconstitutional. However, both the Referendum Political Systems Act of 2000 and the outcome of the 2000 referendum were annulled by the Constitutional Court in June 2004, although the decision was later overturned by the Supreme Court. The justices argued that overturning the referendum would have far-reaching consequences. Again, in December 2002, the Constitutional Court struck down Sections 18 and 19 of the Political Parties and Organizations Act on grounds that they barred political parties from fielding and providing platforms for candidates contrary to the Constitution.
They made the first law in 2000. I remember challenging it in court, which said, okay, you can register parties, but they remain at headquarters. So we went back to court until they made a new law in 2002. So formally, the parties from 1986 to 2002 could not function.
In the petition filed by Paul Semogeri and others versus the Attorney General, the court found that the movement was a political organization and not a system, since it possessed a symbol of the yellow bus, acquired property, intended to set up headquarters, and had sponsored candidates to vie for political positions. The court decisions were besides external pressures for a return to multi-party politics.
Yeah, it started in Jankwanzi when they were meeting as the NRM people before Kategaya passed on. Mr. Bidandi Sari and Kategaya led the crusade that wanted to reinstate political parties. President Museveni got convinced later because of the donors, the pressure of the donors, but he himself as an individual has a phobia for political parties.
By 2003, the NRM leadership led by President Museveni appeared to increasingly become impatient with the dissenting voices within the movement. The fatigue manifested in the decision by Museveni while at Chankwanzi for a retreat to disregard a majority recommendation of the Kionga Committee in support of a continuation of the movement system. It is only the veteran politician Jaberi Bidandi Salih who disapproved of the recommendation of the committee that was instituted to establish the fate of the movement system. However, Museveni is ceding of ground to allow return to multi-party politics in exchange for the removal of the term limit, which was tabled upon the return of MPs to Parliament.
We had this conscription called movement, which, as I've told you, outlived its welcome. And so, it's like a baby who is due for delivery. It became necessary to go multi-party. But like a Siamese twin, there was also need to change the term limits. And so, behind the scenes, they brought them together in a manipulative way for people to find their own way, political freedom.
Those opposed to the term limit removal, among them ministers, became the first casualties of circumstance, including Eria Kategaya, a close childhood friend of President Museveni, who was at the time the Minister for Internal Affairs. Others included Miriam Atembe, the then State Minister for Ethics and Integrity, Jaberi Bidandi Salih, then Minister for Local Government, Major Amanya Mushega, who went on to become the Secretary General of East African Community, and Sarah Chiinji Musoke, the then State Minister for Internal Affairs.
I still hold that as important. Leaders must have limits.
That is 2003. That's when, of course, he threw me out of cabinet, and he was very angry. And then the multi-party people, many of us were 54 who voted against the removal of the term limit. So he won us. They went and continued to remove the term limit.
Several NRM-leaning MPs with opinions contrary to the lifting of the term limit had the relation severed. This includes Salam Musumba, Augustine Ruzindana, and Major John Kazora.
Most of the people in Iran came from those parties, either DP or UPC, and also Liberal Party. When they went in NRM, they were all very fast. They wanted to change the country. They said all sorts of good things. The same people who came from those. Now, when they got annoyed with each other, they started forming Young Parliamentarian Association, YPA, PAFO, Reform Agenda. Then, of course, you got this party which has now split.
We had a situation in which we needed to provide an alternative to movement system. And so we set up a political platform that we named Forum for Democratic Change. It was composed of 3 entities largely. There was the Parliamentary Advocacy Forum, there was the Change Initiative, there was the Reform Agenda by Dr. Besigye, and there was the National Democratic Forum by Chairman Chapa Karuhanga.
On 28 July 2005, after the back and forth push, the country went for a second referendum in a space of 5 years. This time, the electorates voted for a return to a multi-party system. It is now 20 years since political parties legally returned to the political playing field. But whether the political parties have made meaningful progress is a matter that attracts mixed reviews.
More power! Our power!
Jackson Onyango, NTV.
Everywhere! Everywhere!